Sorry, I was running back to my little room to get set up. Okay.
Right.
Okay, we are recording. I'll cut out the part where Brody dropped his phone. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to FishBowl number 4. Let's just get into it then. The first question: people tend to misunderstand Verfirmdung effect because of how their culture understands its translation into their language. Alienation and to make strange in our language doesn't actually match what Brecht was after. How would you go about redefining the complexity of Brecht's ideas out of Germany into English? I'll go ahead and start, and then we will go to Lily Kate. I feel like alienation and the implications of the word doesn't really match the fee effect and what it means for Brecht's definition, but I don't think to make strange is too far off. But I think a better way to describe to make strange is kind of like to break the fourth wall, but not exactly. It's more than just the audience or the actors talking to the audience. It's about the characters acting in an atypical or strange way so that the audience doesn't get comfortable in a sense and doesn't get too emotionally involved with the characters so that they can still catch the moral of the story rather than, oh no, my favorite character died. It's like, oh, I get the point of the story. I also think this includes like the musical interludes or like the sudden change in pace in a way to keep the audience on their toes. So yeah, Lily Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, to kind of piggyback on that, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I don't think alienation really fits it, but to make strange definitely fits it. Um, in my opinion, I think the best way to describe it in our language is to highlight or to focus, um, which kind of makes sense to me because it's like he wanted to use this method to like show specific elements or meanings of the plays that he was like putting on, and he wanted to like really hit those important parts so that it like meant something to the audience, and that so they were able to like connect and communicate with the content that was being given to them rather than being like distracted.
I think we lost Lily Kate. Do we want to move on to Ollie until we can get Lily back?
We can do that. I think we lost her is a crazy way to phrase it, by the way. But what I thought originally when I heard like the term alienation was like this is gonna be like South Park, which it wasn't. And like I figured out that it's not like that because the goal of Brecht isn't to make the audience feel uncomfortable because the goal of Brecht is to make the audience feel nothing. And being uncomfortable is one of those things. Like he doesn't want them to feel, he wants them to think. So instead, I think that Brechtian theater is designed to feel different than life instead of different than um humanity. Like he wants you to like know you're in the theater. He doesn't want you to be like immersed in the theater, which I have my own opinions on, but I'll leave them for the second question where I wrote a lot about how I don't like Brecht. Um but I think it's more so designed to make a separation between theater and people, which I don't like because I think that theater at its core is a representation of life. Ooh, my computer's zooming in on me. But that was dramatic. But I don't like it, but I do think that's what he means by that.
Cool. Lily Kate, if we got you back, you can
Yes,
finish
I am
what
so
you were
sorry. My
saying.
hotspot died, and so Ethan, wonderful person right here next to me, lent me hotspot. So, can anyone tell me where it cut me off? Because it kind of just
Maybe
You said
start like
something.
halfway.
Just if I can read then just being like talking about how I think that you know, he used it like related elements that he wanted to make sense. Because I feel like that's kind of like what his whole thing was about, was to really like highlight things, and it wasn't meant to be overly confusing. And I think people got that kind of the language barrier, but then like when you kind of like break it down, I think it's just like another method of like making things clear for the audience. So that's all I was saying.
Cool. Sarah? Or wait, no, Brody. Sorry. Wait. All the hands are changing. Sina.
Oh. Okay. I was gonna say like the way I kind of viewed it was kind of like Brecht was wanting you to kind of detach yourself from the theater. It was kind of like what Ollie was saying, where it was like you wanted Brecht was aiming for like a separation from like getting too involved with the theater. But yeah, the word that I really like latched onto when I was reading about it in the lecture and just thinking about the question was like detachment. And how he would like have these like different forms to like get just like get your mind away from the actual story itself and just like in like the part that in the lecture that really stuck out to me was he wasn't allowing you to reach that full point of catharsis, and I thought that was really significant as well, and how it was like it was like in a way he wasn't letting you get have empathy or letting you have emotions for the people that were involved with the play.
Cool. Sina?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction to Brody. My first thought or the word that stuck with me was distance. So I feel like I'm sure a lot of our answers are going to be similar in this because it's more of a uh, uh, an objective answer. But I think that all these tactics go back to like that removal, that distance from the characters and their feelings. Um, Whether I agree with those tactics is different, but I think that the distance. I wrote my translation would be to use odd practices to create emotional distance. So I think it's obviously like detachment from the story, but also from where the characters are at in that story. So just like creating that distance.
I think it was Sarah.
Okay. You guys kind of already like talked about kind of what I thought, and I feel like okay, honestly, while like reading the show, it it almost felt like I was reading a brick wall, if that makes sense. Like, does this make sense? Like, okay, so like alienation and like to make strange have like negative connotations around them. But and I know like oh my gosh, I can't like put my words together right now. Like he wanted the audience to like I'm sorry, to like be highly engaged, but not like fully immersed in it emotionally. But I'm sorry, I can't speak right now, you guys.
Like
Like
he
I'm
was
trying
kind of
to
like
like add something new, but like my words aren't working.
I, I I think I know what you're going for. It was kind of like less. He wasn't aiming for like a negative or a positive. It was just like he wanted neutral, like a
Yeah,
hyper neutrality.
I feel like what we misunderstand about it is that like we think it requires a lack of emotion, which I mean it kind of does, but not fully. Like there is a balance. And that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like I don't fully understand this. If I mean, I'm gonna be so for real. Okay.
Lisa?
Yeah, my kind of idea was pretty similar to Brody's and Cena's. Um, I think I interpreted it a little bit differently though, almost more like abstract in the art. The little definition that I made was to make in an unexplored fashion because I still was trying to keep it really short, and that was like the shortest I could get it to make sense. And something that I found really interesting was I kind of like, I don't like learning about languages, but I like learning about like different words in different languages that don't have translations. And I think trying to make the word or the definition so short to alienate or to make strange, it almost is trying to supplement this word for like an English synonym when it just doesn't have one. And so it's just not achieving its purpose, which I found to be a little interesting for theater. And I also compared it's funny to keep like kind of the separation between like feeling catharsis and not, because honestly we humans can connect with anything and empathize with anything. And the thing that I kept thinking about was we freaking empathize with the hungry caterpillar. Like we can empathize with anything, and so trying to make work that doesn't do that is really funny in some ways.
Ella?
For me, when I was trying to redefine the German word, I defined it as using directive measures for the audience to maintain the ingrained depth of the plot, which is mainly what he wanted to try using the neutrality of the gesture, not even the gestures, because he tried to like have the actors remove themselves from the character as a way to make it so that you can tell that, well, you're able to like get pulled out of the story real quick and into reality, because he really wanted to show that the social like issues that were like going on in the play, like for the good woman of Setsuan, to show that those same issues are still outside in the real world, especially once they exit the theater doors. That was mainly how I redefined it as.
Cool. I just want to get the people that haven't talked yet to get a chance to talk before you. If you still want to talk at the end, Ollie, you can go ahead. But I know we have 3 people that haven't talked, I believe. So whoever wants to go out of those can raise their hand, their little digital hand, or their red hand, I guess.
I focus more on the latter 2 questions, so somebody else can go before me.
So one of the things that I kind of like redefining it as is I kind of thought of like trying to make like the familiar visible again. So like kind of like distant. I don't know how to like exactly phrase it. Is I agree with a lot of what y'all are saying about how it does make you feel distant and about how it I like how she did phrase it. Like it gets you almost to catharsis but not fully there.
Kareen, if you want to talk now. Or Amanda. You were
Y'all went
muted.
out.
Go, you're muted.
Y'all went out for a second. Say it again. I'm sorry.
You can go now if you want. If you're
Okay.
ready.
Okay, so for the practicality of, for the second question or the first question? First one?
The first one.
Okay, so I was gonna touch on what Brody had, because I caught the latter end of Brody's, that he didn't really like, he didn't want to have a negative or a positive connotation attached to that. He really wanted to keep it kind of neutral. But once it kind of moved over to new platforms and everything, people just simply took the meaning of the word and ran with it. If that makes sense. Like he really tried to like push the narrative of like, hey, I want this to like be a neutral thing. Like I don't want it to have a negative or a positive connotation attached to it. So I really liked what Brody had to say about that, and a couple other people too, because they were like, I agree with this. Yeah.
Okay, Amanda, if you are ready.
I know she had texted me and said she's having trouble with her Wi-Fi, so.
Yeah, no, can anyone else hear her?
Yeah, Amanda, you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
If you have another device, maybe try joining on that, or we could do like, you can type it out and then we could like read it for you. I don't know. Type it out in the chat, perhaps.
For the sake of time, do you think we should just move on to the next question and then we can come back for
Yeah.
Amanda's answer?
Yeah. And like we said, we're gonna split the second two questions for the sake of time. So half of us are gonna answer the second question, half of us are gonna answer the third question. So whoever raises their hands first for the second question will, and then the rest of us will answer the third one. And then once Amanda's back, we'll circle back to her. Cool. Second question, are Brecht's practice versus theories of epic theater practical, doable, achievable? Sarah.
Okay, I think most of us raised our hands on this one, but so I I know that Brecht believed that like the only way to achieve social change was like through the theater was to present like no emotion in performances. But to me, it's like, I mean, I think it can be achievable, yes, but it's like I don't understand how, like, if there's no emotion on the stage, how does it elicit emotion through the audience? And it's like, personally, I don't agree with his technique. If I'm not like investing emotionally in something, I I don't know, I might not care enough about it, you know, like to work for it to change. Um, you know, like if I'm just like staring at a brick wall, like that's that's just staring at a brick wall. Like I'm not gonna think about anything of it. Does this make sense? I feel like this whole like this whole week was kind of confusing for me, like for this chapter or whatever. Um, but I mean that's kind of just the way I see it. But I do think breaking the fourth wall was highly effective. I do like that. Okay.
Kate?
Okay, yes, Sarah, about breaking the fourth wall, that is something I love to see. And I think that by having that, it definitely makes it something that's definitely doable. Because breaking the fourth wall can kind of like look different from different perspectives. And so I think it's pretty doable. And I think it's practical because like compared to other methods that I have personally like kind of like looked over and stuff, um, it was a lot easier to portray in my mind because it was focused and it was organized. Like it kind of had like a direct goal, but at the same time it was like deep and it was described in a way that was understandable for me. And I think that could be very understandable for everyone involved in like a theatrical production just because of like the practicality of it. And with that, I think it makes it easier to bring to stage because it's clear. And there was like a goal of what the art was like wanted to look like or supposed to look like, and I think that is inspiring to other people. And if anything, something that is like deep in thought and inspiring is very important and doable for most theater people. Yeah.
Okay, Ollie?
Yes. Going off of what Sarah said about him being confusing, yeah, he's so confusing to me, and maybe that's why I don't like him, is the fact that I don't understand him, which is like, that's not cool, but also like he wrote the manifesto and I'm the one who had to read it, so, um, but he makes such a big paradox of himself because he's like encouraging the audience to not empathize with the characters, but he still wants them to live through the characters' shoes, but you can't do that without having a sense of empathy. He wants you to understand these characters and think about these characters, but not feel what these characters feel. And like, I don't know about y'all, but I have never ever met someone who like doesn't feel anything ever. Like, intellect and emotion are separate things, but they are fully overlapping, and you can't have one without the other. And I think that's why he makes such a paradox of himself. Um, I think he wants things in neat little boxes, but that's just not how people are. And I think that theater is such a representation of how people are, and you can't have the humanities without the humanity. It makes no sense. Um, y'all are talking about the fourth wall a lot. I do like the fourth wall being broken sometimes. Um, I think it needs to be used sparingly. I'm thinking about like right now in film, if someone like looks at the camera at me like directly, I get freaked out, and I don't want that too much. I thought it was used I thought it was used tastefully in the Good Person of Szechuan, but I also like I understand that. I understand what he was going for with that, and I can appreciate it without liking it. Especially that ending, the ending monologue where it's like, yeah, don't be mad at us, but we don't know the answer, so it's up to you. Okay, at least let me feel the answer. Don't make me think about the answer and keep my emotions out of it. Ugh, this week made me really mad. I don't mean to take it out on you guys. um, I wrote down on my notes, I don't want to be told to think about how to be a better person. I want to see how either being a good person or a bad person affects people emotionally and on a human level. Because like I don't want to be told think about how to be better. Think on it. I do that all the time. I want to see how being better is the right option. I want to see how that affects the world around me, and I can't have that if I don't see the emotion of it. All right. I'll stop yappering.
Okay, Zena?
Yeah, I had a lot of the same feelings, and it makes me really happy to know y'all did too, because a lot of times, because I'm so new to theater, I'm like, oh, I'm just not getting it. Like I'm a dummy. I'm not experienced enough. So it actually makes me feel a lot better that y'all also had those feelings. I'm new to theater, but I'm not new to people. And while I'm sure a lot of this is just like my lack of understanding, I also have like a really deep, deep issue with like the binary of logic and emotion, or like he puts it as in the reading as like reason and feeling. I don't think that it's that simple. I don't think that we can solve problems logically if we just reject emotion. I think that actually the best source of change is when we're able to process and acknowledge and work through emotions, because I think that so much of like hurt and pain in the world is because of people's, sorry, I'm ranting, but like it's because of people's lack of their acknowledging their emotions and their lack of processing their emotions. And I know that this is like coming in a time when there's so much war and sickness and pain and death. And it only makes sense that he's like, we've got to try something different. I get that. But I think that like, even if you look at all of those wars and pain, they're because so many people, so many people couldn't just like acknowledge their emotions and what other people's feelings and the effects of those feelings on the greater society. So yeah, I have a real big problem with that binary, and I don't think it's that simple. And I think that even if you're rejecting emotion, that's coming from an emotion of fear or insecurity or sadness, or and so that in and of itself is emotion. That is all.
You ate that. That was very good.
Agreed. Ella?
So for all of us, sorry, I just said the same word twice. It's mostly about the emotional aspect that we all need with theater, and how that technically ties with our empathy, because as humans, we are empathetic. We care about it. We should care about each other and everything. We should have the emotional intelligence to be able to show and see that what is affecting everybody is going to affect us, and that we all need to be collective together as a one. And that is why, what was the question again? Hold on. I have this in my notes. Well, because his methods are achievable and doable in what he wants to be shown as more of the knowledgeable side about humans, how we have to like use our brains and everything. He achieves that to a certain extent. Like we can maybe come up with solutions, but we might not be willing to do it if we don't see that, almost like behind the curtain, that's the actual like rough things that happen because we didn't think about intervening until the very last minute. That's, yeah, like I agree with everybody here. So yeah.
Okay, I want to get two more people for this question. So after Brody, one more person. That's maybe not Sarah because you've already talked, and I want everyone to get a chance. But Brody, go ahead.
So I definitely approached this question very differently from everyone else. I agree with everyone, like for the actual theories part of it all. But when I first read the question, my viewpoint went into like the actual practices on how epic theater and like Brechtian theater was like done, in the sense of like what they did to remove the audience from like the theater. And I feel like that definitely is still done very well and like often all the time. Like I in my notes I had talked about the revival of Sunset Boulevard and how they use like cameras of him like walking down the street and everything, and how it like, in my opinion, I don't really like it because it is one of those kind of removals from like watching theater, and it's like you're including elements of like something that like you wouldn't see in the theater, and I feel like it goes along with the Brechtian theater. I'm saying theater a lot. And, but yeah, I feel like the actual like physical practices of epic theater can still be done, and but I don't necessarily think they're always effective, even if like, oh, it's cool to be doing that, but I don't always think it's like effective in the same sense of like it removes that like feeling of emotion. Yeah.
Caroline?
So I think like I think it is practical, but again, in theater, people I feel like go to see shows and they love theater because you do feel something. And I think that's why we all get into it. Like I love going to a theater and leaving with a lesson and seeing how it affected people even in the background that you wouldn't think it affects. And just I think if you remove emotions from theater, it's not really theater. Like there's certain aspects that it can be, but I don't really know like how to clearly explain it. But that's what I kind of have written down in my notes. Is that it's practical, but I don't like it.
Okay, let's move on to the third and final question. Or Sarah, do you want to?
I was just gonna ask you guys a question real quick. I don't know if like I'm having some sort of like disconnect or like forgetting something, but like what like, was he as effective as other techniques, like realism and naturalism? Am I, like, do you guys know? Like, did he bring about any social change?
Like historically, you mean?
I guess. I I mean, yeah, because I mean, like I don't know. I just like I want to know, like, was it as effective as others? Did we read
I
about
feel like
that?
the
I don't
majority.
remember reading about what?
I was just saying, I feel like personally, at least modern now, what I can tell from most of these this group's opinions is that it's kind of sucked and wasn't very effective.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I
I can
mean,
only
yeah.
assume that maybe
If
it was similar back then.
if I could interject real quick, Amanda emailed me like one of her responses to the I think this is the answer to like the second question. If I could just like read it out real quick.
Sure.
Okay, so she said, it can be debated if Brecht's ideas on epic theater are easy or difficult, and in which ways. Brecht rejects the idea of psychological immersion, but supports the ideas of actors showing their character, not becoming them. When looking at the struggles behind his ideas, the practicality does not come into question. Western culture has been fueled by many plays of naturalism or involve more psychological aspects. Brecht's desire is for Shu Tai to be a message or a social argument, not for her to just become a character. Brecht's ideas work, but only if the production fully commits to a piece being socially analytical and not just an aesthetic piece. Basically, Brecht's ideas work, but only if the production fully commits to a piece being socially analytical and not just an aesthetic piece. If the audience is able to view the characters as a social message, it works. And then I think then there's another section that I think that is the answer to 3, the third question.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and just say the question and then you can answer for her, I suppose. Okay. Brecht flees Germany and comes to the US and teaches in US universities. Where do we see evidence of his ideas in US theater after World War II?
Okay. And Amanda said, Brecht's influence on U.S. theater culture is noticeable after World War II. An example of this is Cabaret. This is a good example because it uses songs to comment on different events of the show. It is also based on historical events and uses visible theatrics. The goal of the music in Cabaret is not to fuel romance between characters, but to continue fueling the plot and social commentary. Brecht supported the idea of using theater as protest.
Corinne?
Okay, so I have there's a good bit of evidence where we see his influence. Like, okay, so politically and social, I have these like bullet points out. So for politically and like socially, there a really big example is Tony Kushner, Angels in America. He uses a lot of the epic structure and the political themes that Brecht, I'm sorry if I'm saying his name right, tried to push, like especially after he fled Germany. And then for like for musicals or whatever, another big example is a Cabaret. I hope I'm right on that. But it uses the song to comment on the action. It's a very like we all know Cabaret. We all know like the story and the themes behind it. And then so for direct addressing and like breaking the fourth wall, which we talked about so much in the second question, he really wanted the actors to like when they did it to speak directly at the audience to push whatever like knowledgeable thing that he wanted to say because he like so many people other like said he didn't want people to have emotions. He really wanted to be that intellectual influence of the brain. So whenever they did have that kind of monologue like that, he would want them to like it was very like straight on. And then in the living theater, there is a couple of good examples. It's a lot of like experimental, like new stuff that were kind of pushed out around that time. I couldn't find any specific examples, but there's a lot of there's a lot of influence by his political engagement. And they're like his programs are taught across America, but as we can tell by just this current audience, and I'm sure by so many others, that it's getting more and more difficult to connect to the younger audiences because we want to be able to feel the emotions that the characters are feeling, because that pushes a scene in the play in your partner so much. Thank you.
Lisa?
Yeah, I think I read the question a little bit differently, but I think it goes great with how we ended. I looked at the lecture and his Three Penny Opera and how a lot of times that opera pops up when we're in a society that's looking for very meaningful works. It's almost a contrast. And to me, I think I'm starting to understand where Brick's head was at. I wrote down it's a comfort play that you've never watched before. So almost like a comfort show. And it made me think of one of my friends whose comfort show is BoJack Horseman, which a lot to unpack there. But I mean, comfort shows can have meanings, but they can also be a way to turn off your brain. And I during the conversation wrote this down because I think it's really interesting, and it's almost playing devil's advocate for Ollie and Sina's answer in the last question. But the story doesn't have to be impactful. Maybe theater isn't about solving a problem. It's almost just an escape, almost like opening up a book and going into fantasy land. Um, it made me think of the question, does theater have to acknowledge your feelings to be theater? But that was like the main points that I hit.
My turn. I know from the lecture that we learned that Expressionism started in Germany and moved to the US. And we also know that Brecht was very into Expressionism. And I don't think that he single-handedly brought Expressionism over, but I do think that he probably had a hand in that. But when I think about like other sources of media that kind of use Expressionism and Brecht's like epic theater, I thought of silent films, which maybe that's just my brain, but I feel like it, especially the epic theater, worked with just the format of silent films because you didn't hear their voices and they weren't typically that long, so it was harder to become like emotionally involved with the characters, so it fit with that aspect of just focus on the plot, don't worry about the emotional, or focus on the moral rather than the characters. And I also, maybe this is just me, but I remember a significant amount of like fourth wall breaks, like specifically like characters looking at or actors looking at the camera. So yeah. Ollie?
I won't rant this time. I just wanted to circle back real quick to Sarah's question, because I don't think we answered it, and I don't know the answer. Actually, is my problem. I want to know. I want to know if he had a big historical impact. But what I do know is I've seen multiple showings of The Seagull, and I've never seen The Good Person of Szechuan on stage. And then for this question, where I think this isn't exactly the question, but it ties in. Where I think that Brecht could thrive is children's theater because he's very much tell, don't show. And like that would really benefit kids because it's like they don't have the gears yet to figure out if my camera doesn't stop zooming in and zooming out. Oh my gosh. They don't have the gears yet to like figure out, oh, a small frown means they're sad, but they're keeping it together. No, like a kid would be like, what's going on? And the character would be like, I'm sad. And that works really well for Brecht. I do want to give him his flowers where they're deserved, but um as an adult audience, I can't rock with him.
Brody?
Kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, Ollie, like with the children's theater idea, this is kind of go on a tangent, but like it's almost like he wants to beat you over the head with like, this is how you should feel, or like not how you should feel. This is how you should view this. That you should view the play like this, and this is what you should gain from seeing this play. And it's not like it's just weird how he goes about it. For the actual question though, I also feel like just like all the different like meta-ness plays, if that makes sense. Like, my mind kind of went to Rent a little bit, where it's kind of like it is, even though Rent itself is very, it's so emotional and it is not Brechtian like in the slightest. But like those elements of like connecting with the audience and not connecting, but like fourth wall breaking basically, and like um having it turn in on itself. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but like I feel like a lot of the theater moving past like Brechtian, it never fully encapsulated what he was originally trying to do, but it just like took bits and pieces that like worked the best and like could actually be used in theater without like fully capturing what he was trying to achieve. So yeah.
Hey, Lisa?
Yeah, I wanted to talk again because Ollie brought up some really fun points. So interesting. Um, just like with the children's theater, it made me think about like directors trusting their audience, and Brecht's method really feels like he doesn't trust his audience to get it. And I think that that's something that's so easy to think, oh, that's children's theater, because your audience probably isn't going to get it the first time. You can't just show, you have to show and tell. That's probably why they call it show and tell. Um, and something that I also think of with that is like a lot of times for children's shows at the end, they tell you this is the theme. And so children don't have to come up with why it was impactful, why what they watched was just impactful. It's told to them. So I do think it caters towards children's theater, and I think that it is a very good thing when it's implemented right there.
Ooh, has everyone got a chance to talk? Yes, yes. Wonderful. Okay, and I guess that's it for our discussion. Thank you, everyone. Excellent answers. Finish up the recording.